Welcome back to Landman Now, podcasting the profession, brought to you by the American Association of Professional Landmen. I'm your host, Chad Smith, and in today's episode of our Landman TV companion series, we'll be covering season 2, episode 9 of Paramount's Landman, where we separate the fact from the fiction, highlighting the real work behind the drama. Joining the show today, we have Jimmy Wright and Jerry Padilla. Thank you both for joining the show today. And if you don't mind giving the audience just a little bit of background on yourselves before we get started, Jimmy, if you want to go first.
Sure, absolutely. My name's Jimmy Wright. Thank you so much for having me. I own a small company here in Austin, JW Enterprises, and we provide mineral management services. My background is primarily in-house land management for operators, as well as did some field work, those types of things. But we really have focused our company now on helping mineral owners manage their assets. So I kind of like to say we're, a janitorial service. We just kind of clean up the mess that comes from oil and gas assets being owned and being managed.
Well, very good, very good. And Jerry, if you wouldn't mind giving the audience a little bit of background on you.
Sure. My name is Jerry Padilla, and I'm part owner in a brokerage firm that I've had. It's Land Management Partners, or LMP, as some people like to call it. And we've been in business probably for the last decade and been in the business for the last 18 years. Always worked the field. Yeah, I've worked a lot of the lower 48. We work with our company actually works with a lot of exploration companies and even non-op companies, just evaluating assets, due diligence, title work, just kind of like your land brokerage firm. So we're more of a boutique firm. We've been doing it and we love it.
Well, good deal, good deal. And again, thank you guys for coming on and jumping into episode 9. So we're getting close to the end here. We've only got one left. They've got some things they've got to tie up, but uh, so season 2, it feels like they've kind of made a steady shift from their land-based operations. We've seen a lot of more of the offshore stuff and the risks that go with that. Is that kind of a realistic escalation for a company like MTEX, who in season 1 it seemed like they were land and onshore based guys, and now they've just totally switched the narrative to be an offshore. How realistic is that for a company to just be like, you know what, we've been very successful onshore. Let's see if it how it works offshore.
I mean, it could happen for sure. I don't think it's super common. I think the the reality of this being a privately owned company that is owned by basically one guy who then passes away and now his wife owns it. Um, that does lend itself to a lot more of like a, hey, hold my beer, watch this. I'm just swinging for the fences kind of an approach. Um, but oh wait a minute, I forgot we had this asset out there that's worth $400 million. Oh, my bad. Let me just, I forgot that was still on the books. Like that's not going to happen, kind of a thing. And so that's just, it's pretty unrealistic that that would happen in that way. But small independent operators do those types of things from time to time. There's, anecdotally, a handful of groups I can think of who have done something that is in that same vein where it's like, hey, let's drill this offshore well in China and let's do this other thing that's like totally out of left field. But those companies don't typically have the size of asset base that MTEX would lead you to believe that they have out in the Permian Basin.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what Jimmy said. I mean, you don't see a lot of that. I mean, not saying, that it couldn't happen, but just the size of that, it just to me, it's not realistic. But
Oh.
it's Hollywood, so hey,
Uh,
why not?
Right. That I think Jerry would agree that that is not the place in this show where I'm going to say, look, I cannot suspend my disbelief
Yeah.
is
Right.
what's happening, right? Like there's plenty of other things that are like, okay, that is so much less believable than this happening as somebody that's going to go in on this offshore, big risk deal.
Right.
So what I'm taking from both of you guys is that offshore is not something you just dip your toes in.
No.
Sorry, that was a terrible joke.
No, I
That
don't
was
think so.
terrible.
I think you're going to probably have to be pretty well buttoned up to play in those, no pun intended, to play in those waters,
Yeah. All right, Jerry, do you have a terrible pun that we can?
Yeah.
You're going to have a hard time keeping up, brother. I'm sorry. I'll try to tone
Yeah.
it down,
I
but
know, I know, I know.
And this is, I mean, you mentioned this, and now I've kind of got my brain going. Drilling in China, how does that work? I mean, I imagine they own everything. Like, what kind of a return are you somebody trying to get when they drill in China?
I don't know. I mean, this was again, this was an offshore deal there in the whatever offshore China that they were trying to do, and it's a group that they also drill in South Texas. Like their main thing is South Texas, and then they also had put together a deal that you know does those types of things. So I would assume you'd have to have a pretty high set of confidence in the geology and the operations. And again, it's just a different kind of contract and risk reward,
Yeah,
that if you're there's extra levels of risk that have to be added on when you're dealing with a sovereign, as your contracts are subject to, right? Like the contracts that landmen enter and negotiate into, um, are subject to the laws of wherever they're being signed. And so domestically, like Jerry said, in the lower 48, you've got a certain level of risk, um, associated with the existing laws in those different jurisdictions. But ultimately, you feel comfortable that the overarching government is going to abide with your
yeah,
rules and laws. But that's an extra level of risk that you take on if you're dealing with another country that just have to add that in.
Yeah, and I mean, I
yeah,
have a feeling that, just with just the recent Venezuela situation, you've got a lot of, you know, um, oil executives that are kind of kicking those tires right now.
For
sure,
sure.
yeah,
Well, yeah, and then the CEO, I think of Exxon, he came out and said, "Well, we've been there twice and had our assets seized."
Yeah.
And but he didn't say, "So therefore we're not going back." He was
yeah,
just saying like, we're
I'd be
the
asking
juice
what
got to
kind
be
of
worth the
protection.
squeeze. We have
Yeah.
to have some safety that we are willing to, take that extra layer of risk on it.
Yeah.
yeah. Third time's a charm for that.
But
Maybe.
there are those little guys. I'm rooting for the little guys. The struggling little companies like ExxonMobil. Just name one of these days they'll be. I'm rooting for them.
So in previous episodes, we've seen where Tommy's handing over the well sites to Cooper. So in episode 9, we see Cooper taking charge of this and telling his team, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do." And they go to a well site that it is still producing, but it's not producing very much. And so the guys, especially Boss, seem a little skeptical about drilling there. But Cooper insists on going with his gut. So what do you guys think about Cooper's decision to drill there? I mean, is going with your gut a good strategy, or should he have listened to the guys that have been drilling for
Yeah.
forever?
Well, I mean, Cooper, I mean, he did make the comment about the fault line being along there. And, this isn't, I guess he's been, I'm going to say he's been lucky so far, but, out of his 6 guesses that he made, I mean, I remember I was out in Jack County, and I remember I was doing a ride along with one of the uh, guys that was drilling. I think it was a drilling engineer. And I remember he's like, "Well, tell me, what do you see out here?" And I was like, "Well, I see a lot of pump jacks and everything." So, and he just kind of tells me, he's like, "So tell me, why do I need seismic if I've got all these wells that are producing?" Now, I don't know how much it costs to do seismic out there, but I mean, they ended up doing it. But, it kind of gets you thinking, if you've got a bunch of wells that are in one area, 40 acre, and these are just, gun site wells, they're just short, shallow wells. I mean, maybe you don't need it. I don't know if that's what Cooper knew about that geology. I'm assuming that, he looked at it, but, again, it's Holly weird. So, I mean, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think realistically, again, like we've talked about, and different people have said that this show is does a lot of great things, I think, for the industry, and it does a lot of things that aren't very good. And one of the things, for better and for worse, is they kind of merge jobs and tasks into characters, right? You have one person who does what in an organization would it be 13 different people, right? Because that wouldn't be interesting to watch. But the likelihood of a 24-year-old didn't get a degree but studied some geology at Texas Tech, being the person who just has the end all be all, what I say goes, I'm deciding to where to put this rig is I would say zero. Like I cannot imagine that happening anywhere.
Don't talk to
Even
Tyler Campbell.
Yeah,
Just kidding.
yeah. I was gonna say even with a small operator, kind of a thing, they're not gonna, unless it's completely de-risked, they're not gonna bet that $2 million on a vertical, uh, on this guy thinks there's a fault line that goes here, kind of thing. Like they would have talked to the other geologists and they would have hashed it all out and all that stuff.
Yeah, I don't is drilling on a fault line, is that a pretty ordinary practice, or is that something that there's a lot of risk associated with, or
Dude, that's way worse. I think. I mean, that's again, it depends, and there's anecdotally, you could come up with all kinds of examples where it did work and some that didn't, and the worst thing to do is have a landman try to do geology, but every time that we've been involved with anything with a fault, it was not a good turn of events. It was, oh, we lost the hole because of it, or
Right.
the lateral had to stop because it hit it and we couldn't produce into it, or that's not something they seek out typically.
yeah, yeah, I wasn't sure about that, if there was more of a risk going into it, but maybe you get a better payout, or
Yeah. I mean, it kind of struck me as odd just because, when I remember when I was working the Barnett, like we were buying a bunch of leases over on, I think it was on like the west side of 35 over in, the Denton County area. And we tried to venture over the 35 side, and somebody said something, there was a fault line there and you didn't hit anything. So, I mean, it was, I was a landman, I wasn't a geologist, so I wasn't really sure how much truth was to that. But I mean, it looked, I was like, well, okay, but I just remember watching the episode and I was like, do you really want to be drilling down a fault line? Like,
yeah, it's just, well, I guess if it doesn't go well, they call it Cooper's fault.
yeah.
Um, again, sorry for the fun. Uh, so how much of I guess real operators are going off and I'm assuming I know the answer to this already, but going off of the real geology versus these previous successful drills? Because Jerry, I know you mentioned the guy who's out there saying like, look, I've got all these other ones out here, do we really need this seismic and everything like, but how often is your geology driving it versus just like, hey, we know this area, we know we've already done it, we're just going to go off of that?
Yeah, I'd say it. Unfortunately, it depends. I think um, with the shale revolution that happened probably about 20 years ago, when we transitioned most of our onshore development to, you know, uh, improving efficiencies of developing these shale plays, the Barnett Shale and Wolfcamp Shale out in West Texas and Eagleford Shale down in South Texas. The geology and geologists themselves changed because they weren't out looking for, these, salt dome based, major oil discoveries. It was all about efficiency and determining the boundaries of that shale field and promoting efficiencies. So I think that is an interesting piece of the puzzle that, when I worked in-house for an operator, I remember talking to some guys and we were looking at open leasehold And they said, "Well, where's your geology on this?" And I was like, just a landman. I was like, "Dude, it's Martin County. Like that's the geology. You don't need to know. You're going to hit something. It's all about the price point and the efficiencies in that space. And that's not everywhere, but there are a lot of, so I'm always eager to meet young. And what I mean by young is not about to retire in the next 5 years. Young geologists who are not just shale dependent, but with their experience, because that has really turned into an interesting piece of the industry.
Yeah.
So, getting to kind of like, I think the big part of episode 9 is we see that Tommy gets fired. So he gets fired because Cammy and him, they don't see eye to eye on the importance of chasing kind of that rush that comes from a big gamble. Because of Tommy's past failures, he's obviously very risk averse, whereas Cammy's excited because she's just made her first big play. So, in real life upstream operators, how common is the tension between kind of the institutional memory of your failures versus new leadership maybe wanting to take a big swing? Do you think it's better to be optimistically risky or to play it safe?
Well, I mean, I think it all depends, probably the length that you've been in the business. I think that once you've been through a couple of booms and busts, you start to kind of figure out what your almost your tolerance is for risk. I think, if you've been through a bust, I think you understand that it comes and goes quickly. So that can definitely have, some mental aspects. But I also think that you learn from a lot of your mistakes. So, you know, um, I think it's good for an organization to kind of have both. Somebody that kind of, hey, these are the risks. And then, hey, what if we do, hit this? I mean, I don't think we would be where we're at if we didn't take those risks.
Right.
But, I also like, you know, looked at a lot of like the landman discussion groups and like, could she really fire him? Because Monty gave him all his shares of the company and put him as executor of the trust. And, so it might all come back. But, I think if you own it and you have that power to do that, and I think, yeah, I mean, you can fire who you want to.
Yeah. I
So,
I think that's the most realistic landman related thing that's happened in the whole dang show, right? Is, you know, getting crossways with the person who signs the checks and they say, "You're fired. Get out of here." There's a that's a very common piece of it. I don't think it's as common that there's turnover at the top and they're in such um complete disagreement of like the future of the organization. Um, you know, I feel like Cammy has really oscillated between "you're the man, I trust you, you know what to do," to "well, never mind, I'm gonna go hang out with this guy in this $60 million airplane, and that's the life that I'm wanting to live through," and that kind of stuff. And you're not you're holding me back. It's like I don't know. It's like your teenagers are like, "You don't
Yeah.
believe in me, Dad," and like, "I can
Yeah.
do this," kind of a thing was the vibe. And I was like, well, yeah, you can absolutely fire your guy there. Like, that happens. Yeah, for sure.
Tommy, I really didn't like how you tried to steer me away from doing business with the cartel. And
Right.
yeah.
Well, and also, I mean, to be candid, like, Tommy's he's more focused on like having a witty quip to tell somebody than it is to have the interpersonal skills to like deliver bad news. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like he's not a good landman about like, oh gosh, like that character has low EQ, right? Like the emotional like connectivity is not what he's known for that I could see.
Yeah, and we saw
yeah,
that probably from episode one.
Yes,
So,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's not a surprise, but
no.
yeah. It's I don't know that I think they're going to be in trouble. Uh, so do you think that the show? I mean, the show's kind of showing the central conflict being about risk tolerance But do you think it's more that or more who owns the failure when things go? Because Tommy, I mean, I don't think he wants to be a failure, right? And because he kind of sees the writing on the wall here that I think in the last episode he's meeting with Galino and he's telling him, hey, we're kind of hoping this fails so we can take over the cup. And so, do you think it's more so Tommy not wanting to take the risk, or is it more so like hey, this is going to fail? And so that's what really I'm afraid of.
I think, Tommy has, he's got his loyalties that, when Monty, you know, made him president. So I think there's more than it's just the risk or failure of that certain project. I think he's got more on his shoulders to make sure that Monty's family's taken care of, which, as you know, like, I mean, I have, employed a lot of contractors as well. And I remember when COVID hit, that was the worst thing that I could do is to let people go. These people have been with me for years.
Yeah.
And, that's all I could think about was, their families, and unfortunately that is kind of the way our industry goes. And, I think one of my partners gave me some really good advice. She's like, we all know what we get into whenever we join this type of industry. We know, the roller coaster it is. So they know that as well. And we don't like to do it, but it will eventually happen. I'm not going to say it's never going to happen because I've been probably laid off more times than, not for any fault of my own, but it's just the nature of the beast.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. And I think Chad, you made a good point there, like thinking through um Tommy as a character has this really interesting and weird like it's hard if somebody had to like made me say what motivates him. What's his carrot or stick, right? Like why does he do what he does? I would be really hard pressed to come up with a motivator other than he doesn't know any different, right? Like that's what I've always done. And he's mad at his dad that he lived on a rig for a year, but then he still goes and does the exact same thing. And well, I don't want my son to get into this, but I'm not going to be around to take my daughter to drop her off for college. It's like, wait a minute, dude. Like, again, it's okay to have this like duality of like, I want to be a better person than my parents were before me, and it's hard and all those things. But like, I don't know if he's trying like, is he gonna be happy now he's out from under it? He can go raise some capital and buy MTechs out of bankruptcy because he knows it's gonna happen. Or, I mean, like, we just don't know what his motivator is.
That's an interesting theory, though. It goes bankrupt and he tries to save it by I don't know. She let him go, and my wife, the first thing she said was he needs to get his daughter out of Bowie House.
Well, remember she did. Well, didn't she win like 300 grand?
Oh, that's true.
Oh
That's
yeah.
true.
So she could pay for it for just a little while.
Yes, yeah. She could pay for a little while. With with Tommy gone, what do you think the biggest vulnerabilities are for an operator in the middle of this high risk project? I mean, Cammy doesn't do the day-to-day stuff, and really, Tom, I mean, he's the superhero of the company doing 40 jobs in one. So, with a kind of a loss of the leadership there, what do you think their biggest vulnerabilities are?
I mean, I think you said it. It's going to be the leadership. Who's going to be leading them? I mean, you're going to have either people step up. I don't know which character that is right now because it seems like a lot of them do not have oil and gas experience, other than maybe the attorney. But I mean, even then, do you really want an attorney running? Oh, I better not say that.
Yeah, if you want to talk about risk adverse, put somebody whose job is to be the department of no, we can't do that. The helm is typically what the in-house attorneys are known for.
Yeah, I don't think Neil's gonna last very long in that job then.
No.
No, no, but I agree. I think you're going to have a really interesting issue that they're facing is again, unless they introduce some new characters or twist these characters in ways that are kind of unexpected. It's this like totally blue collar workforce that they are highlighting, and then the kind of white collar management team that begrudgingly wades into that space, right? And when you don't have like strategic planning, or like what's the goal, and how, how many rigs do they have running out there, and who's staying on top of that, and who's dealing with the permitting side of things, and how are you dealing with landowner relations, and how are you dealing with, again, and Hollywood doesn't care about that. Like, that's not interesting or exciting of like, let's hear the complaints today.
Yeah.
But which that would be a fascinating story, honestly. Like, from all of my experience, like that would be its own story. But you know, uh, I think that's a piece of it. Is I think there's going to be some element of the, like, who, while it's great that we're waiting for the offshore stuff to come online, like, well, who's going to keep the lights turned on by, pumping the oil down here at the out in the patch, as they say.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Well, it makes you wonder what's going to happen to Cooper now with his dad. It's not there to back him up.
Yeah.
I mean,
I doubt they'll try to put him in that position because I mean he was a worm like a week ago.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Well, and for that matter, I mean, Tommy seemed to cover for a lot of people. Yeah, so how does Cammy handle that situation where the oh, what's the attorney's name? The
Neil,
no, the female attorney,
Jennifer or
Rebecca.
Rebecca.
Rebecca. When she has the relationship with the geologist, how does Cammy handle a situation like,
Yeah.
Tommy was very cool about it. I don't know that would happen everywhere elsewhere.
No, that's,
Um,
yeah.
oh, go ahead if you had something.
That would be frowned upon, to say the least. Like, that's the part, honestly, not to get too much on my soapbox or whatever, but I feel like that's the thing that's been most disappointing about the series, is the kind of flippant way that female characters are portrayed, and it's just really, I don't I don't like it, and it's really difficult to watch this and see them be totally these damsel in distress, or just, oh, I can't survive without a man, or I'm super emotional and I make my decisions just without any foresight at all. And the reality is, in our industry especially, but just in general, like, the literally the best landman I know is a woman. And
Yeah,
so, like, of all my whole career, and
yeah.
so, like, that's really hard to see that just doesn't really get a fair portrayal in the series. So
Right.
Yeah, and I kind of had hope for a little bit of change on that when they this started this season with Demi Moore's character Cammy. Okay, hey, she's going to be a strong figure and everything, but she's they kind of haven't played it that way. And then that Rebecca, the attorney, she started out real like just a pit bull and everything, and then as soon as she gets into a situation, don't fire me,
oh,
yeah,
the bat in the eyes, and oh, he's
yeah,
so pretty, he's got an Australian accent, oh crikey, he's beautiful, kind of a thing.
With the mullet. Don't forget the mullet.
with the
Right,
moment,
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, I
Um,
think you're right. I think, just but I mean, that's Taylor's MO is that's
Yeah.
how he, portrays it. And it's, and you're right. It is unfortunate. Just me as having a daughter, I'm like, oh my gosh, like what, let's not follow these things. And I mean, you're hoping that the characters will grow and you kind of see that growth in them. And I don't know how many seasons that would take, but just not seeing a lot of it right now. Maybe with Ainsley a little bit, but not so much.
a little bit with Ainsley, yeah, but it's still a lot of her scenes are not, um,
No, yeah.
they're not there for, yeah,
It's
for
like,
the,
wow, this is a storyline, I guess.
Yeah.
yeah. I know we touched on a little bit earlier, but I do it is something I want to circle back to. So in some industries, it can take quite a while to find a job if you've been let go. So what does it look like for landmen who find themselves out of a job or looking for another? Does it really just depend on the market, or is it something that is kind of relatively in demand?
I mean, I think it just depends. I think if trying to put my because I know that I've been laid off at least a couple of times. You got to be willing to do kind of whatever to stay in the business. So you might be used to running minerals or surface work or anything like that. But you got to be able to, as a landman, be versatile. Almost a jack of all trades, but doing right of ways or whatever. It does depend. I think if you build a good network, I think that will help you a lot. I think I see, at least in my younger years, I used to see a lot of landmen just they wanted to do the work and then they wanted to go home and collect the paycheck, which is fine, nothing wrong with that. But I knew that if I wanted to survive, I needed to be going to local association meetings, making my network. It may not, pan out today, but a couple of years from now it might. So local associations and even or the national association too. I think you need to be a part of all that. Immerse yourself in it and get to know the people around you.
No, I totally agree with that. And I think um, having a perspective of humility of just because I used to do this job and I used to get paid this doesn't mean that I have to stay at that level. Sometimes you have to, uh, it's like jumping across lily pads. Like sometimes it may seem like you're going back, but really you're just kind of going sideways to be able to move forward. Because, if you say, well, I can only stay in this town because that's where I live, then that's going to hinder your, abilities. And there might be good reasons that you can't relocate. Or maybe, well, I don't want to live like Tommy and that's a real deal landman issue is living out of a suitcase,
Mhm.
when you're starting out, especially or however it is, like you're the, I had so many frequent mile points from the La Quinta down in South Texas when I first started, and my Southwest Visa credit card, I was able to, you know, go take a trip to Los Angeles for the weekend, kind of a thing. It just you live out of a suitcase is the thing. So if just because you've moved up in the ranks, if that's the thing you want to stay with, you have to be prepared to lean on that network and don't ever, think that that's not going to pay off because it pays such high dividends being involved with local associations, national associations, meeting people that do things that are different. I remember one of my very good friends, I met him at a PBLA, I'm sure it was a bar meeting of some kind. I don't remember what the deal was, but he was the first landman I'd ever met who was doing solar. And this was, 15, 20 years ago, like that. And I was like, you know, man, landman, I find you guys landmen are everywhere, but I don't ever meet somebody who's a wind farm attorney. Like,
Yeah.
I want to pick your brain, tell me all about that. That's weird. That's different, and being able to have those relationships, can really pay off dividends when you do let go.
Yeah.
And it's
Networking, networking,
never,
networking.
it's okay if it doesn't pay off, as long as you get to, meet people within your industry. I mean, that's always been a blessing to me is just
Mhm.
knowing the good people that are part of this. So
Right.
Yeah. So word of advice to all the listeners, join your local association, join your national association. APL has a mentorship program. Yeah, no. But for real, I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen it first. I mean, I'm not a landman, right? But I've seen it through working here and everything. This is such a networking driven industry. I mean, there's so many events, so many opportunities to network.
yeah, and it's to me it's always been amazing that we're such a big industry, but if you really look at it, we're so small too, in that like we know a lot of people that the 6 degrees of separation is definitely there, or 7 degrees or whatever, whatever.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy, but yeah, it's big, but it's small. So
Yeah. And that's absolutely right. Being able to know people in different places and can reach out to them or lean on them or double check something of, you know, again, if you have a project that's in a place you've never worked before and there's some unique issues or whatever, being able to call somebody and it's not just you're having to figure it out yourself,
yeah,
that pays dividends that you'll never know when you're planting those seeds of networking on the front end. You don't know what it's going to turn into 10, 15, 20 years down the road.
Absolutely. I mean, you're solar guy, way ahead of the curve. I mean,
Right? Yeah. I mean, it was kind of a wild deal.
okay, so kind of wrapping it up a little bit from and I know we kind of touched on this as well with wanting to see better or more stronger female representation in the show, but from an your industry perspective, what would you want to see Landman do differently in further seasons?
Yeah, I would say that's hands down my number one is I understand, sex sells and all the things, and I'm an adult that lives in a capitalist society, and Paramount is not the UNICEF of uh television programming. They need eyeballs to look at it to sell to their sponsors and all the things. Um I think there's so many of those kind of tangential storylines that, you know, could still be incorporated because there is some kernels of truth to some of the things that the women characters are having to deal with, but it could be written in a way that I think would empower them and not, you know, belittle or be reductive. That would be my main thing, because the reality is, and Jerry knows this, like it would be the most boring show ever if it was what we really do. It's like, I'm like popping the champagne celebrating when the Excel spreadsheet adds up to one. It's like, oh my gosh, we did it, guys. Let's high five kind of a thing. Like that. No one wants to watch that crap, right? Like, but I think there are some really great opportunities to, make some deals and talk through some things. And I think it would be cool if they had more like interaction with a big mineral owner and had somebody who was, upset with the way they were doing something, and, not just what it does to my ranch, you burned up my field, but, like, hey, we had a deal and you retraded it or something. And like, well, the market changed, so we couldn't pay you that. And there's all kinds of things that could be in there that would be wild, like a cold drafting concept. And there's some wild things. Somebody gets a hold of the mineral owner list from the operator and they go in and buy out all the mineral owners, and then it's, well, do they commit fraud? And I mean, you could make some really outlandish, crazy stuff that still would be, you know, um, I think juicy to watch.
Yeah, still better than all the retirement home scenes.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I mean that's yes, thank you. I'm like every time I see that, I'm like, man, like come on, dude. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that yeah, those actors are like 50 and they want them to pretend like they're 90, you know. But anyway, Jerry, what
Yeah,
about you?
I mean, I agree with Jimmy. Like, I think, some of the stronger female characters, but also they kind of did it in season one that I particularly enjoyed. That looks like they kind of got away a little bit from, or a little bit of away from it in season two, is they kind of went into the homes of the rig hands.
Mhm.
They kind of, those characters, I was kind of excited to see kind of where that would go. Don't really see that too much in season two. And, it's just, uh, you know, and out in the oil field. Like I can't remember this last season or this last episode. I mean, there was a little bit of oil field stuff, but it was just a lot of drama. And Taylor Sheridan's, poking fun at liberal stuff, and I mean, and all that yeah, okay, it's funny, I enjoyed it, but if you're looking at what a landman's doing, like Jimmy said, you could probably go into some fun storylines, of busting somebody's lockup, or paying somebody under the table so you can get their title opinion and get it all out there, I mean, but you kind of set that bar really high when you put Tommy with a bag over his head in the very
Yeah.
beginning episode.
Right.
So to kind of follow that, I do think that's can be a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked all Tommy's little monologues from season with
Oh
for one,
God.
with the bag over his head when he's just rattling off all these numbers, or
Uh,
when he
uh,
takes Rebecca to the windmill and he's like, telling her basically, we're gonna run out of this before we find this place. All those little monologues I thought were fun. I know a lot of people thought they were real preachy or whatever, but I thought that they were fun because they gave people chunks of information in a fun way without, it wasn't boring to hear all that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm torn by it because I feel like that when you're talking about when he takes her out to talk to her about the wind turbines, and it's like, again, it's this 3 minute soliloquy of that is just like, you sit there and listen to me tell you this data or whatever. That's the other side that doesn't get discussed or whatever. And it's like, okay, well, I can see some of that stuff. And then at the end, he's like, these are all owned by the oil companies and they use it to power their rigs. I'm like, that's absolutely not true. Like there's zero of that. Like they don't, the oil companies, like, why would you add that part in to there, right? Like maybe the operators, as part of their, green energy component of their organization, might own some wind turbine farms or whatever. But if you drive out to Sweetwater, that's not what's being used to, you know, move the pump jacks up and down to drill, to produce oil. So it's like, why
Right.
would you, by doing that, then that adds a lack of credibility of like, well, if that's not true, then what else isn't? Well, so it's a little bit, I don't know, can kind of undermine your position when you try to use that to have a conversation. I don't know if you know this, but there are not a whole lot of oil and gas people in Austin, Texas, where I live. So when I get to have those conversations in places, it's like I'm a bit more like, oh, yeah, well, that's a great point, but here's some other pieces of the puzzle kind of a thing. So you have to be a little bit more diplomatic, I guess.
And the monologues, I think, just to your point, yeah, I think in a way they've changed. So your monologues now are, like Cammy's, interpretation of risk, and what the way she sees it versus Tommy. Ainsley and her mom, their view of the liberal side with her roommate and the whole TCU situation, which I'm glad I went to tech in the '90s because that would not have happened. But I digress from that. Jimmy will have more experience in Austin than I would.
Well, and my daughter is in college right now, and so like I was just sitting there thinking, like, again, that was a very interesting story arc of like, all right, we're going to paint this person as totally inconsiderate and unwilling to move and all the things, and it was like, yeah, there are a-holes and at every of every stripe out there, sort of thing. So
And it was such a caricature of that.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I got
Completely.
my ferret
But
here.
yeah,
Why would you have a problem with that? Like, okay, like, come on, man. Like,
yeah. I mean, and,
small,
and the
like,
thing is, and the thing also is that, I mean, if you look at it, there's also been other shows that have poked fun at, right-leaning conservatives that are completely way out there. I mean,
right.
you look at what is it, the Netflix show, The Hunting Wives or whatever,
Oh my God.
completely
Yeah.
crazy.
Sure.
And then they even made a movie about, I can't remember what it was, but it's just a back and forth. And I don't know, when I first saw it, I was just like, I don't know about, then I remembered it was Taylor Sheridan doing it. I was like, this is just, it's poking fun, almost poking the bear, but
Yeah,
not
sure.
the ferret.
Yeah, poking the ferret out there. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. They took every single thing,
Oh, yeah.
everything you could think of and just made it into one character.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
From
Pagan.
Minneapolis.
Hey,
My
don't
name's
worry.
Pagan.
When you guys ever, when y'all take your kids to drop them off for college and you get upset, just know you can always call that private shopper at Neiman Marcus, and she'll be there to help calm you down when you just can't possibly. I mean, I was like, oh, good Lord. I mean, again, those exist. That's real. All the things, but is that really what you have to devolve that per? Like, my baby's leaving. I better go spend some money on some stuff. Like,
And
okay.
I'm definitely not showing my wife that she can go to Neiman Marcus and have that personal shopper.
Um, so if you had to give an award for season two so far, uh, I'm sorry, give one award for season two so far. Your most believable oil field moment or your most unrealistic industry moment. What scenes would you pick and why?
In season two,
And
or
we can do the whole thing. Yeah, it doesn't have to just be season two.
hmm,
So most believable thing you've seen and the most unrealistic thing you've seen.
hmm.
I think So I would I have not watched the majority of this season for all the reasons I've been talking about today. I did watch the most recent episode and I watched the first episode of the season, and that was really what turned me off um, from it, honestly. Um, but I would say, probably the um, most unrealistic thing that I've seen. I don't know there's going to be in this last episode what I would call the mobilization party. Whenever she had everybody out in the bayou to watch the tugboat go by,
Mm.
I don't think that's very realistic as a thing to show the investors and to show our partners that we are actually going to do what we say we're going to do. Like I don't think that that was very realistic. If you're a multi-billionaire cartel leader, you're not going to be excited to go sit out there and like see this happen. Like that seems pretty unrealistic to me.
Yeah, they had it set up like it was the Kentucky Derby for a tugboat.
Yeah.
Right.
With the
Yeah.
Midgets, the proof of launch is what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
how many I don't know how many times I've called my landowners and say, "Hey, I'm pushing dirt. I want y'all to come out here and see that we're about to drill this well, this pad.
Uh-huh.
We're about to, make this pad, so we can hold your lease."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the most believable, I think, would be, and I'm going to take this honestly from probably from season one at the end when
Okay.
Cooper's actually talking to the landowner and says and kind of shows him his plan. That was probably the most realistic, because I have done that.
Yeah.
And then unrealistic, obviously, first scene from Tommy. Never had a bag over my head, which I know we've probably discussed that ad nauseum. But also, I think it's just not to me, it's just not feasible that that your backers are now cartel members. I just don't see anybody in the oil field doing that. And if I'm wrong on that, you don't need to let me know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say probably the thing that I would say I agree with Jerry that probably some of the most realistic stuff is the him when Cooper's talking with the landowner, trying to go on his own, trying to make a deal happen. And I would also say probably one of the other most realistic pieces of the puzzle that I've just kind of seen bits and pieces of is the pressures of decision makers to maintain capital. Um, and I know that's kind of a broad thing, like, well, of course, but I've seen so many different companies, really at that top level. Obviously Monty dies, has a heart attack at whatever 52 years old because he's the pressure and the stress and all the things of spinning the plates and got to rob Peter to pay Paul and borrow this money to pay that. And I got to, I've always seeking the next thrill and all those things. But I think it's a real pressure that people don't think through. Like when I first started in the business, I was going to climb the ladder and I was going to become a this and I was going to get up and be the head of honcho kind of a thing. And you don't realize that as you move up those pressures and you're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars, and these decisions really can weigh on you. So I think that's a pretty realistic piece of the puzzle that I think from all the podcasts of yours that I've listened to, I think that kind of got fleshed out a little bit in season two more than in season one.
Yeah.
And Jerry, I do know some guys that I'm pretty sure they borrowed money from the mob to buy and sell some. We'll talk offline whenever we're at our next thing. We bought some deals where I'm like, man, I'm pretty sure we bought this from like some soprano types that owned it. They had this oil field in West Texas, and you're like, hey, don't go looking too much in that due diligence, y'all. Like we just cursory title is all we care about.
But when we do talk, I mean, as you know, I'm channeling my inner Gallino with
Yeah,
with my outfit today.
I
So.
love it. I love it.
A couple more questions before we wrap up. So, if you were dropped into MTEX for as an advisor for 1 week only, what's the single decision you'd try the hardest to reverse, and what would you do differently?
To reverse, We got to have our backing from something a little bit more um, than people that can put you 6 feet under.
Yeah, 100%. That's definitely, I definitely agree. It's find which assets you could liquidate that
Mhm.
you could maximize some cash to keep the investors at bay. Again, you're going to have, I know a group that they sold off some properties in the eastern part of the Permian because they were needing them for cash, and the group that bought them just cleaned up the title on it and turned around and flipped it and made, hundreds of millions of dollars because the title was bad. But that first group didn't look back and say, well, gosh, if we'd been able to keep that, we could have made several hundred million more. It was like, thank God we were able to keep the lights on, right?
Yeah.
So it's all about perspective and that being able to undo that I agree. I'd say that, and then I would probably implement some different housing structure at the for the employees. Like I cannot imagine the house that Tommy and his dad and the lawyer and the head pumper and sometimes his teenage daughter and sometimes his ex-wife all live in. It's like, yeah, that's not we that liability would be immediately undone. We're going to be like, look, we got to figure something else out, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Animal House.
Yeah, right.
At the frat house.
That's like, uh-huh.
All right. So, lastly, if you were talking to another energy professional who hadn't seen the show and they ask you whether it's worth watching, what's a one sentence answer you'd give them?
Nonsense. Go ahead, Jen. You got it.
I think my one sentence answer would be if you decide to watch it, know that it is first and foremost a um, entertainment show that has drifted further away from the oil and gas element of it. It has that as a background or the universe that it's in, but it really is not the main piece of the puzzle anymore. So um, I I think that's the best way to put it is that it started out as being much more oil and gas focused, and now it has transitioned to these people are having these crazy lives and they just happen to work sometimes in the oil and gas business.
Yeah.
I would just say, look, it's definitely fun to watch. Just know that that is not what I do, and that's not my life.
Fair. That's
Not a,
man, I lead into the opposite every time I get a new client. And again, our clients are all mineral owners, and so they'll meet me and whatever we're talking to them. I was like, man, I can neither confirm nor deny that that is a biographical, representation of what my life has been like. And every time I give a talk, that's what I do. I say, man, all these folks that's exactly what it's like. Yep, you're exactly right, 100%. There's no fabrication at all.
Maybe
Did
you walk
that
in
last
with a
week.
limp. Sorry, I
Uh-huh.
got shot earlier.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm just getting the deals done, whatever it's going to take.
Yep.
Well, that's all the questions I had. Was there anything else that either of you wanted to touch on before we wrap it up?
Chad, I kind of wanted to ask you a little bit and get your
Yeah.
thoughts on this. Like, obviously you've been tangentially in the oil and gas space and working with Landman and doing those things. Like, but what has been the thing that you would say is in interviewing all these landmen over the last couple of years and hearing people, water cooler talk about it and what you've seen, what's been the thing that you learned about what landmen do that has been kind of the most eye-opening for you?
Eye-opening. Well, I know that I mean, maybe this isn't directly answering your question, but kind of what we said earlier, I learned how tight-knit of a community it is. And I mean, I've pretty much everybody I've met working in this industry just the nicest people, most fun people, fun to be around. But yeah, it's a great community of people. It's a great industry to work in. Um, and yeah, it's just been it's full of a bunch of really fun, good people. Uh, I didn't really know a ton coming into this role. But yeah, that's probably one of the things I mean, every industry is going to have good people in it, right? But I think it's outweighed a little bit more. I think that the landmen are a lot of fun and a lot of really good people.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I mean that's my experience. I'm sure that there's some
Sure.
landowner out there who had a bad experience who'd be like, this guy is full of it. But no, that's been my experience. Like yeah, again, it's fun. There's a lot of networking and it's been a fun industry to, like you said, kind of work adjacent kind of or tangentially with not being a landman, but still being able to associate with the industry.
And
Well,
how do you think that the podcast and I know I've caught a couple of episodes and I've enjoyed them. But as far as like the general public, have we received like feedback or even from the show? I mean, are they still working with AAPL to I guess quote unquote kind of maybe make sure they get things right or you know
No, I mean, I wish they would have given me the script ahead of time so I could have planned my podcast questions a little better. But whenever the show was coming out, there was little things like, they originally had landman as two separate words, and we kind of told them, hey, it's one word, and things like that. But I don't think they've really reached out, at least to my knowledge, and said, hey, are we getting this right or that right or anything like that. And that's kind of where this version of the podcast, this companion podcast was formed, just wanting to tell people, hey, this is what things really are. And this is, the like we always say, that separating the fiction from the fact or fact from the fiction, the what, the Hollywood drama is. And I think that's been beneficial to people to, maybe somebody who's not working in the industry and they get to tune into this and find out like, I can sort through mostly what's obviously not real, but here's a couple things that I really did have a question on, and this being a resource for them to come and find out like, hey, this is how it actually is, and it's not all, you know, gun smoke and BS or whatever, so I think that's been beneficial and also just giving people an opportunity to find out more about how they can get involved. So
yeah.
that's awesome.
I think the involvement, not just in the general, general public, but just landmen that are doing the job, to know that hey, there's a big network out there for y'all to tap into and kick around ideas or whatever it may be. I know that just I mean looking at this episode and because I'm not an offshore guy, so once they hit offshore stuff, I was like I have no idea if that's real or not. And then I think the I forget the guy's name, but the geologist that kind of convinces Cammy to do a deep water drill. I had kind of looked on some of these discussions, and they were saying they're like, well, the rig that they were pulling out there that everybody went for the proof of launch, like that wasn't even big enough to drill right off the side of the so stuff like that. I think I mean yeah you can pick it, but I don't know. I think the podcast has been good for just landmen that are out there, and then also the general people that are interested in our profession, to kind of get an understanding that hey, we're a fun group. We're not exactly like Tommy and and his crew, but we're proud of what we do. So
yeah, it's the industry that powers the world, powers everything. So it's important, and I'm glad that it's gotten its, somewhat recognition through a show like this. And if anything we can do on the podcast to continue to highlight that, then that's a plus as well. But it's been fun to do. It's been fun to have people on and just get different people's opinions and things like that. And so it's been good. But
Oh,
Well,
uh,
again, we really appreciate you doing this and putting it on. And if you ever want to become a landman, Jerry or I can find you a job somewhere doing something, you can, go down to South Texas and broker some deals with the cartel for us. You know,
yeah,
yeah. So you were networking, you didn't even know
you didn't even know, Chad. Look
there
at there,
you
buddy.
go. There you go.
it.
Well, with that, that wraps up this episode of Landman Now, podcasting the profession. So thanks for listening. And again, very big thank you to Jerry and Jimmy both for coming on and joining the show and helping us figure out what they got right and what they got wrong. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. You can also learn more about APL, our resources, membership opportunities, and like we said, any networking or mentorship programs. Just go visit landman.org and find out more there. So until next time, I'm Chad Smith, and this has been Landman Now, podcasting the profession.